Hello and welcome back, Eddie Radosovich, George Stoya, Josh McQuistion down in Scoop HQ, and the news is out there down at Houston, Scoop HQ. The news is out there. Michael Fasusi has committed to Oklahoma, and another, I guess not another, but a monumental day when you're talking about the Oklahoma offensive line. And Josh, let's just go straight to you because this is obviously your area of expertise just in terms of this is something that we've been talking about for a long time, this 2025 class, this offensive line class, and now you add Michael Fasusi in. He's the fourth offensive lineman committed to Oklahoma in the 2025 class, joining Ryan Foje, Darius Afalava, as well as Owen Hollenbeck. Just, I guess, on the basis of how big is this? I know that we've been talking about it, but your thoughts now that Oklahoma has officially landed the Louisville five-star offensive tackle, Michael Fasusi.
Guys, kind of can't believe we're here, that we're actually having this conversation. It reminds me a lot of David Stone a year ago. We've talked about that parallel before, but this is the hill that it felt like for a few years now Oklahoma just couldn't quite climb. And for all the successes of Bill Bedenbaugh and all the things that we talk about that are his strengths, to now have this, he went, toe-to-toe with anybody you can think. I mean, everybody wanted Michael Fasusi, even though, people will talk about Texas and A&M. Michael Fasusi is one of those guys could have played anywhere he wanted to in the country. And now having picked Oklahoma, that's just huge. And it's not just about, his talent, and that's great, and we can get into that a little bit. But it's really what it says about Oklahoma, not only from an ability to recruit, but NIL. All the things that, I think people have tried to say, well, Oklahoma's got to work on that, or Oklahoma's, got to do this. If you don't have those ducks in a row, you don't get Michael Fasusi. That does not happen. So I think it is a very clear statement of intent by Oklahoma, what they're going to do, the level they kind of expect to compete at.
Josh, you said from the start that they wanted to get just one of those big four, Ty Haywood, Andrew Babalola, Michael Fasusi, Lamont Rogers. They finally get one of those four. Is he a guy of those four? I know you kind of, I can't remember which show it was, but it was a while back that you kind of put them in order of what you thought maybe the highest ceiling was, also guys that could come in and play right away. Where's Michael Fasusi in terms of, can he come in and play right away for Oklahoma next year as a true freshman?
He's really raw. There's no question about it. I mean, again, for those that missed it, and Steve Wiltfong's story earlier this week where he talked about, this is his 5th year anniversary of living in the United States. So this isn't a guy that grew up from Pop Warner playing football and has all of it just ingrained in him. He's still learning a lot. I mean, even some things that, I think some might expect him to know, but his talent is so considerable. And we all know, again, what we think of Oklahoma's ability to develop offensive linemen. I think it's possible. Would I bet on it? I don't know that I'd go that far. I mean, I'm always a big proponent of even a really talented offensive tackle. You want to give them time, let them develop. The list of guys who were ready at an early age is pretty small. I mean, we're talking about the Trent Williams, those kind of guys. And Michael, again, to reiterate the point of how big this is, he's the highest ranked signee Oklahoma's ever had on the offensive line. So I don't want to rule anything out for him. And what I talked about with some of our on the recruiting report earlier this week was the thing I like about Mike is he has a body type. He has the athleticism to play tackle, but he has a body type to play guard. So I think Oklahoma could kind of see where he fits best, maybe give him a year at guard where it's not, we've talked about this before. At guard, the light isn't quite so bright. He can have some time to learn. Let's get up to speed, kind of get up to, up to task with some of the things he needs to know. So I think there is a possibility, but I think anybody like going out and just penciling Michael Fasusi into the starting lineup in 2025, that's a lot to put on him at such an early age.
Josh, we're looking at the junior highlight film for Michael Fasusi here on screen now. And when you're talking about a player at 6'5", 300, obviously there's a lot to like that Bill Bedenbaugh and the rest of the country was looking for when you're talking about him as a player, though. If he were to stay at a tackle position or even if he were to kick inside at guard, just in terms of where he's at right now going into his senior season, what do you project him to be? Like, how good can a Michael Fasusi be at Oklahoma?
Yeah, and I do want to be clear because I know people are out there like he's a tackle. I completely agree. He is a tackle. That is the future for him. I'm just talking about because it's kind of just for the sake of a comparison. Ryan Foje's in the class. Ryan Foje's a little taller, a little longer. I think he's a tackle almost undoubtedly. Fasusi, I think, has that versatility to play either, but I do think his best and brightest future is at tackle, and I think that's absolutely where Oklahoma intends to play him. So, just to be clear, but I will say when you watch him and the things that he does as a young guy, the stuff that sticks out to me is how quickly he gets to the second level. This is not one of those big guys that, like, he's got to play you in a phone booth. This is a guy who can get out on linebackers. You talk about some of the pull stuff that we know Oklahoma has been, the counter, some of the bread and butter stuff they've done through the years. Michael Fasusi was built to do those things. Like that is exactly the kind of player he is. And I've got to think that's a big part of this appeal for him is knowing how well he is suited to a lot of the things that Bill Bedenbaugh and that offensive staff have really leaned to through the years. So I again, the idea of him pulling on a counter, lead blocking, like, if you're an OU fan, the idea of him doing that on the floor of the Cotton Bowl, like that's the kind of stuff you should be thinking about because that's the kind of dude he is. Super athletic. I like him as a finisher. I'd like him to see, I'd like to see him be a little more consistent with it. But Michael's not one of those guys. I was talking to Zane Rowe the other day, and he was mentioning, what a, kind of the soccer background that Michael has. And I think people might take that to be like, oh, he's a little soft. That's not Mike. Mike will 100% finish a block, but you just want to see him do it more often. And as he gets bigger and stronger, really in the upper body, when you watch him work, it's a lot of good feet, explosive feet. But as he gets bigger and stronger, working with Jerry Schmidt kind of from the upper half up, there's no reason to think that he can't be just an absolutely dominant run blocker.
I was just about to say, he seems like the type of player that Jerry Schmidt dreams about coaching in that weight room. But Josh, how big of a win is this for a guy like Bill Bedenbaugh?
Absolutely.
Because, I mean, we've talked about it. We talked about it on Monday's show, the criticism that's faced him. But, we've seen him turn 3 and 4 stars, JUCO guys, transfers into these high caliber NFL offensive linemen. I just keep thinking, what can he do with a guy that has this much talent, a guy like Michael Fasusi?
It kind of reminds me a little bit of where this thing was a year ago when we were talking about the defensive tackle position. And then, like you said, Josh, they got David Stone, and then it kind of all fell together properly. This might be the other way where they got everybody and Ryan Foje and Owen Hollenbeck and Darius Afalava, and then you got the big one at the end with Michael Fasusi.
Absolutely. And this is huge. I mean, there's no question about it. And I know, we've had some people when we have these kind of conversations, the YouTube comments are like, why does it only matter, if he gets 5 stars? He's developed 3 and 4s. I know, and I get it, and we all understand that. At the same time, when you look at the aggregate, you look at how recruiting rankings work, the higher likelihood of being a high-level NFL draft choice comes with being a higher ranked player. It just does. Like the math backs it up over and over and over again. And so to continually bet on, you're going to be the smartest, you're going to develop the best, that's a tough bet to continue to pay off. Now, it's amazing that Bill Bedenbaugh has done it, but this makes this cuts your margin for error a little bit. Or, it grows it a little bit. You have a little more room to not have to be perfect every day or have, Michael Fasusi is one of those guys, and Ryan Foje is the same way. They are so talented, they can make a mistake and get away with it. Like, you get other guys, they're really technically sound and they're outstanding football players, but if they get wrong-footed or they get out of leverage, they can't fix their problem. These are the kind of guys that have that ability, and that's why everybody in the country goes after these guys, because they are unique and there are only so many human beings that are this large and can move like this. So this is massive for him. What's really interesting, guys, is now you get into that conversation where Bill gets to answer this question, because we've all seen him. We know he brings 3s and 4 stars in and turns them into NFL players. We've not seen him do the other round. The thing that everybody does, we've not seen him do yet, where he takes a 5-star guy and makes him an NFL guy. And really, from a recruiting to, leaving campus kind of thing, that's really the last question for Bill. Like, that's the last thing that we can say. Haven't seen him do that yet. because really every other, whether you're talking about tackles, guards, centers, he's produced them all at a high level. And now it's just about kind of, the next crop of 5 stars. He can point and say, we took Michael Fasusi and, he ended up a top 10 pick. Look how great he is.
What do you make of just the future as a whole on the Oklahoma offensive line? Obviously, they're going to lose a number of guys after the 2024 season, whether it be guys that are just graduating out of the program or guys that have come in for just a year under Bill. It seems like everything is kind of moving in the right direction, though. It seems like you bring in this quartet, you look back to 2024, Eugene Brooks and Eddie Pierre-Louis have made waves early, even going back to, Josh Bates, who it sounds like is going to be a part of the Oklahoma's offensive line plans in 2024 at center. It seems like there's a good component there, and especially when you think back to everything that has been said here as Oklahoma makes the move into the SEC with the importance and kind of the focus in the trenches on the defensive line as well as the offensive line.
Yeah, if these guys develop in the way you would expect them to, 2025, I think, will be an improvement, maybe not from an experience standpoint, but from a talent standpoint, where you get guys like Eugene Brooks and Eddie Pierre-Louis, and they're ready, and they're able to really start getting out there and showing you, their ability level, those kind of things. 2026, though, guys, if I'm an OU fan and I love offensive line play, that's got to be a pretty exciting possibility, because at tackle, you're going to have a Logan Howland who's going to be a redshirt junior at that point, who I know a lot of people still don't know enough about him. I think Logan Howland has really, really high-end potential. He is the prototypical Bill Bedenbaugh recruit. He's the guy we have seen turn in to a draft pick and be a guy that really exceeded expectations. Then again, the two guys we're talking about, Ryan Foje and Michael Fasusi. Well, then on the inside, there's a lot of nice depth. I mean, you talk about Eugene Brooks. We mentioned Eddie Pierre-Louis, Josh Bates at center. I believe Troy Everett could still be back for that year, if I'm not mistaken. I need to look. I need to make sure that's right with some of the injury stuff. But there's a lot that people kind of already know, and Heath Ozida is another one. So I mean, you have a lot of guys that people are already starting to know and starting to hear good things about, and say those guys could still be there. And, again, 2026, we don't know what's going to be happening at some other positions. But if you're talking about just the offensive line, that might be the group where you say, okay, that's starting to get back into that Joe Moore conversation, and really maybe a special group for Bill Bedenbaugh.
Josh, I know you guys will continue to cover Michael Fasusi down in Louisville with some interview stuff down there. But he's obviously going to be the gem of this class, but where do you think this class is going to end up? Is this going to be a top 10 class? I mean, what do you like about this class? Do you think what is this, 23rd commitment?
23rd commitment in the 2025 class, and the rankings for Oklahoma should get a little bit of a bump. Number 12 overall in the country, number 3 overall offensive tackle.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely going to see a move up. I think probably it's going to end up somewhere from like 9 to 12. It would be my guess with a player like this. It's just become, George, when you look at the amount of players they've got in, I mean, 2 top 100 offensive linemen, a bunch of, kind of 250 to 300 type of players. That used to be a pretty safe bet to be a top 10 class. But now it's gotten to be where if you don't have 2 or 3 5-stars, it's pretty hard to be in that top 7 or 8. Like, I mean, the talent has become so consolidated at the top with the Georgias and Ohio States and Alabamas and Texas. And, in the past couple of years, Oklahoma was part of that equation as well. But now with Mike, you kind of get that one guy that can kind of push you way up in the rankings. And, I know people will see it now and say, well, Michael's committed and, they're not top 7. So how are they going to stay in the top 10? As On3 works, for those that don't know, they continue to add commitments. So Oklahoma has commitments that will count to its final total that aren't being counted right now. So it's a little bit of a different equation. So I think you're going to see the depth of Oklahoma's class will start to pay off, where guys like Floyd Boucard and some of those guys that are kind of like mid 4-stars will start kind of pushing up Oklahoma's number a little bit. And again, I think anywhere from 9 to 12 is probably the number. Oklahoma took some guys early on that I thought were maybe guys they could have waited on, or maybe guys that, the rankings were never going to love. They aren't the huge, big, fast, long, obvious talents. And I think maybe that's held them back a little bit. But you look at some of the key positions where they've hit, obviously in the offensive line. We mentioned, Floyd Boucard being a big win, Trent Wilson being a big win at defensive tackle. They've got some really nice pieces here. And then you throw in that wide receiver room, the secondary group. I mean, there's a lot to like in this class.
It's kind of crazy. They're pretty much almost done
Yeah.
with their class maybe.
100%. Today's a big day for Oklahoma, obviously, with the commitment of Louisville five-star offensive tackle Michael Fasusi, and the coverage will continue from Louisville High School on SoonerScoop.com. We'll have an instant reaction breakdown. Josh and I are going to get ready to hop in and a teleport back down to Louisville High School. We're here right now, but we're going to be at Louisville High School when you see us next time on the SoonerScoop.com YouTube channel, talking to Michael Fasusi, obviously, post-commitment from the ceremony down there, and kind of getting into a little bit more of everything to come with the big commitment today for the five-star offensive tackle, Michael Fasusi. So for George, Josh, I'm Eddie. We'll see you right back here on the SoonerScoop.com YouTube channel.